All right, guys. UVA going for 2 consecutive wins and to help close out the month of December. This is Mark
And
Jerome,
2024.
T Dubs, and Chris Havlicek with
That's
UVA
right.
basketball on Locker Room Access. Have I know you're so excited about this Memphis game. You've studied them. You guys, we're waiting for Dougie to come on too shortly. He's got a couple of good stories about Penny. Have you broke down the team down? I saw them play Clemson. They're a high octane offense, but I want to before we get to that,
Yeah.
you've been talking about rosters and where guys are coming from for since the inception of UVA basketball locker room access. This team may be one of the most maybe they're extreme when you look at their roster and you see that everyone has transferred except for one kid.
Yeah, it's amazing. They've got, we played them a year ago, roughly, and they have one kid that played against us in that game. And by the way, he scored like 2 points. But, in an era where I think any kind of traditionalist, any kind of basketball fan that's been around for a while enjoyed those years where you'd have a guy for 3 or 4 years, right? That's kind of our era. We're now in an era where if you have one guy who returns, like it is unusual, but it's not like they're the only, they're not like Sasquatch out there. There's other Sasquatches out there. And there are other teams and maybe I don't know what the formula is, but maybe if you keep half your team, if we stay under this current kind of regime, if you keep half of your team, maybe that's good. This is an extreme example for sure, Mark, but I'm glad you pointed that out. They have their average, so on their roster, the average D1 experience, meaning people that have played D1 before, is about 3.25 years. So it's essentially, this is like an AAU team. When you move up from
Right.
sixth grade
Right.
to sixth grade to seventh grade, there's like that one kid that's in between. He stays on the sixth grade team. That's what we're dealing with. And I know that's your language. So yeah, really unusual.
No, it is. When I was looking over the roster earlier today, I was thinking, man, this is like going to the park and playing pickup basketball, high level pickup basketball, because you don't even know the guys you're playing with. Everybody's a transfer. And you're right, it's not the only program. I think of St. John's, although I haven't seen the whole St. John's roster, but I know a lot of kids traditionally over the last, I don't know about traditionally, but over the last 4 or 5 years, everybody's been a transfer practically. And
Yeah, and it's part of the reason.
Let's just all go to the park and play.
Yeah, it's part of the reason I chuckle when I read our media and the comments coming out of the staff is that, oh, we've got a bunch of new guys. Like, we have a team that's been together a lot compared to them. So it's a new era. You gotta get used to the guys that are on the court with you faster than you used to have to.
Yeah, no, we're in an era, as you said earlier, if you have guys that have been together for 2 years, half your roster has been together for 2 years, you're like you're full of experience. You
Yes,
have a
you
roster
are.
full
You're
of
right.
experience, right? You're like you have consistency and continuity now, and that's ridiculous to say it. We're not even talking about 2 years in. We're talking about a year and a quarter of basketball, really.
Yeah, it's
Dougie,
incredible.
welcome to the show.
We can't hear you, Fresh. Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
That's because my mic was off. Miserable weather here. Hard time getting home, but I made it. I sprinted. Did the whole thing you'd be proud, Have.
Yeah, boy.
Excited for this game. We got a Tennessee team coming into town. Both places are very special to my heart. We'll talk about that at some point, I'm sure.
T-Dub, I'm loving the hat and the T-shirt.
Yeah, I mean it's the orange out, right? So I figured go find. I don't have a lot of orange UVA stuff. Amazingly, like not orange, but anyway, orange out. They got the throwback uniforms on, even though they're totally not throwback, but they kind of look like it. But we'll see.
That's
It's going to be interesting.
What throwback compared to Memphis? So.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Memphis State They did a throwback thing with Memphis State not too long ago, I think.
I'm just talking about the players.
Yeah, the players forget it.
Just yeah. They actually have. I'm sure you've seen this. They have one guy, the big guy that started at Memphis. I think it's Cisse.
Yeah.
He started at Memphis 5 years ago or 4 years ago, and then went to 2 other schools, and now he's back.
He boomeranged back. Let's just talk about the color orange for a sec while we're on the topic. Number one, it's a tough color to wear unless you're deer hunting. Let's start with that, right? It's just not. Nobody looks good in orange. Like, who really looks good? We've been pining for it. We're getting a Thanksgiving size, a holiday sized portion of it tonight. You know what's interesting, and I was trying to reminisce with Fresh a little bit about this. Our first year, we had the mesh orange, which was great. That was a really good one. When JJ came, we got the shiny orange, which just was like way too big. It was Fab Five influenced. Everybody looked terrible in it. There you go, T-Dub. Yes.
This is the one, right? This is the shiny like satin material.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me as we talk about this is we never wore orange at home, Fresh. We wore it on the road.
Dino.
But
yep.
At home we had the white mesh jerseys always for our time there. And but hey, you know what? I'm glad they're back. I think it's a smart move by Ron to bring back and embrace the parking cone look. And hopefully we don't play like parking cones tonight.
The difference now, though, if you CW posted Sean Singletary compared to what it looks like Isaac number 11 is going to wear. Our stuff, we could breathe. They look like wrestling singlets now have. It's just form-fitting, like stuff that you know, when your time in Miami Beach that you would regularly, go to some fancy store and put on just for, different reasons.
Yeah.
But how do you play in these tight clothes?
Well, I got to tell you, I had to butter my love handles to get this jersey on tonight. What was once loose is now form-fitting and kind of European. So I'm doing my best.
And we don't realize how spoiled we were when we had Ethan Saliba ready with that butter.
That's right.
Hey, when you guys put those uniforms on, did you guys think they were so hot and they were like fire? And
so hot.
Yeah.
Hey, we did get a year, and this is important to note, I think. We did get a year. Our first year, it was my redshirt year, Fresh's full playing year. We got 1 full year of short shorts. Yep. And before the Fab Five, the next year the Fab Five came in, and everything elongated and got baggier. But we had some John Stockton. The Stockton effect was working for us back in the day, which did not benefit my body at the time.
I'll TMI that the only way I can combat that short tightness was to combat it with a pair of shorts underneath.
Yeah.
Right? The white shorts we would get, and the other layers, nobody's business, but I had to wear shorts under those tight shorts just to be able to deal with that tightness.
Yeah, it was tough. Hey, but it's good news. We got orange back.
T-Dubs, you see that comment from Sean about the N1 uniform?
Yeah, no N1 uniform. That was the Pete Gillen era.
N1.
We were wearing N1 uniforms. They were horrendous. I mean, we looked so strange, but it was a different look. It's probably a look that nobody remembers because no one watched back then. So
who do you guys think even made ours? I have no idea. Louis Vuitton probably have. Who made our uniforms back then? There's no Russell,
like Champion or Starter. There was. Yeah, it was made of sailing canvas, and it would rub your nipples off during the game.
It is Starter.
Starter. That's Dino, right? That's Harold.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That is so awesome, T-Dubs, that you have that. That's tremendous.
What size is that? 44? What's the number on it?
It's
46. I'll bet he wore something huge.
50.
No, see that tells you everything you need to know.
It's pretty cool.
And how tall is he?
6'2".
Yeah, 6.
6'1". You know, we were all so skinny. He was jacked, but we were all skinny. He was a 42, 44 probably. That's funny. That's amazing. This shirt.
Beale Street from Ryan's on Beale Street.
Yeah, Ryan. Go get some of those dry rub ribs in Memphis at that famous spot. I forget what it's called, but
The Rendezvous.
Rendezvous. Solid
Yep.
fresh. Good pull
Yep.
by you.
Yeah, the only place I've been laughed at for trying to make an order, I was like, "Can I get some A1 sauce?" And they're like, "No, just stop it." They just brought it. They brought it. Amazing.
Yeah, good spot.
Daniel's in the stadium. No one is in the student section 10 minutes before tip.
Yeah, there's no students there, right? That's so. I sort of get it. I mean,
Yeah, that's because of the
Columbia.
holiday, right? Everybody's on break.
Yeah, everybody's on break. TW would have been there. This is probably your glory days, TW, living in Charlottesville when nobody's there and you can just sit wherever you want for these
Yeah, it
games.
was great.
You
That's
must have
the
been. Your
best.
brother must have loved it.
Yeah. Back then it was a little more intense in the ACC, so people actually would stay back for a game or two. I think I remember we played Wake Forest, I believe, with Tim Duncan, #1 in the country, and everyone stayed back and slept at U-Haul to get the best seats. I mean, it was a big deal.
It was also the pre-Pokemon Go where kids are now in Northern Virginia skating around trying to find Pokemon. So I'm kidding, but
no, you're probably right. There's a little bit of that.
Different era.
Hey, but Fresh, we remember some of our really good crowds that we played in front of. It's always great back then, ACC season, but we had some good crowds in the NIT.
Oh yeah.
In '93 when it was just over spring break, we had just the townspeople there, and man, those were some raucous crowds. There was tailgating going on.
That's right. Well, that's what we missed back then. Like we love our Virginia people and our fans and all that, but if you really want to get rowdy, you bring the real townspeople in who just were soldiers, they can't normally sniff it. I don't know. It was so expensive back then. It probably cost like $3, so they couldn't afford it. I'm kidding.
And our boy Jazznut
go nuts. It was
Jazznut is in there from LRA. You guys know him. Yep. Jazznut's in the house. He said he was going to send some pictures. So, hey, it's a tough time of year. It's a curious time to break out the orange jerseys. I wish we had waited till the students were back, like maybe mid to late January. But hey, they're back, and we're happy about it.
So, give us the breakdown, of Memphis.
Yeah.
What do we expect?
And are you guys? How worried are you guys about this game tonight?
Very.
I mean, worried. I don't know. We haven't had a big win yet, so
this feels like a really big game. I think for Ron. Because we were 0-3 against top 25 teams, #1. 2 of those games were played in the Bahamas in like a weird, hotel ballroom, and the other one was at a neutral court. But let's talk about Memphis. 8-2. Listen to their wins. This is impressive. Wins against Mizzou, UNLV, Ohio, San Francisco, UConn, Michigan State, Clemson, Louisiana Tech. They lost against Auburn. There's no shame in that. War Eagle for Gracie. Even I'm not, like a massive Auburn fan, but I'm a massive women's volleyball Auburn fan. And then they lost a game against Arkansas State, which was kind of curious to me and I think others because that doesn't jibe with their kind of their record and their personnel. So, Mark, you mentioned they got one player back. He's 6'7", Nick Jourdain. He's about 7 points a game. The guys we got to worry about, and they really play 3 guards. PJ Haggerty, incredible guy, averaging about 22. He's shooting 47% from 2. And over 40% in 3. Tyrese Hunter, 16 points a game, 52% from 3. A little guy, Colby Rogers, almost 14 points per game. He's shooting 45% from 2 and 3. And then 2 big guys that are pretty good. Musa Cisse, you mentioned him, Mark, the guy who boomeranged back. And then they've got a guy, Dane Danza, who's averaging 11 points a game. As I mentioned, almost 3.25 years experience. This is an old, experienced team. They're not super deep, but 3-guard lineup. They play really, really fast, which I think is, a big topic on forum this week was tempo and pace and all that. They average about 70 possessions a game. We average 61. They averaged about 13 points a game on fast breaks. We averaged 3. And they shoot really well. They're shooting like 46% from 2 and about 50% from 3. So the big difference for me is going to be they crash the boards like crazy. They are all over the offensive boards. We don't do that. We prefer to run back and set up our defense. They send guys in there. So my guess, Fresh, is that this week, Jay Willie and Ron were running a lot of drills with guys like boxing out from the guard position, which you don't see a ton, but they are sending dudes. And they're like, if you want to run, and I think they'll do it more because they know our guys are just not conditioned to do that. So it's an interesting matchup. They play fast, they shoot well, and they're old, athletic, and experienced. We play pretty slowly, very slowly. We're shooting a good percentage, but I think if we win this game, we've got to score in the 70s. And that's not our forte. So we'll see what happens. But a big game for the staff, a big game for the players. We're at home, orange jerseys. There's a lot at stake here, so it feels like a must-win to me.
Yeah, I watched the Clemson game, the second half of the Clemson game, and that scouting report is spot on, at least during that Clemson game. And the guards put it up. They are not afraid to shoot it. They've got experience. They go for offensive rebounds. They push the ball up court. They don't have, and they'll shoot 1-on-1 in transition, 1-on-2 in transition. At least they did against Clemson. And that game was back and forth. And I was surprised how well they came out, because the last score I saw was the Arkansas State score when they lost to Arkansas State, and we're all scratching our head about that one. Like, it just doesn't make sense to beat a team, to beat some of these quality teams. And then, UNLV's solid. They're not great. Michigan State's good. They're not great this year. But Clemson's pretty strong. Clemson had that game. They took a couple of horrible shots at the end of the game with the lead, and they just let and Clemson's defensive transition was awful, horrible. And Memphis took advantage of that. Pushed the ball up court, getting some open threes. So we've got to be very careful tonight in transition and locating our guy. And we haven't done that great this year. No. Our transition defense has not been great, and we've given up a lot of open shots. As Doug Workman says, he has a feeling we'll be lunch meat tonight. We certainly will if we don't play good, strong transition defense.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like we say this a lot. This is like a contrast. This is sort of Tony Bennett basketball, old school basketball versus new school. A big debate on locker room access around pace, efficiency. There's a bunch of people like quoting statistics that you really have to dig down deep to understand. And Fresh and I were sort of like, all right, like, I get all that. And there's lots of graphs and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, we need our guards to touch the paint, kick out for threes. We need someone to step up other than IMAC. IMAC's going to get his 13 to 18 because he's just good. We need a guy coming out of the woodwork, coming out of the woods that just gets, 20 points. Maybe it's a TJ Power. Maybe Rhodey goes off. Maybe Elijah Saunders goes nuts. Maybe we see Bliss, which is another thing we haven't talked about. Like, what's going on there? But they have very good guards, and they push, and they're going to pressure us. And it's going to be a big challenge for, Day-Day's been gimpy, right? He got hurt, then he sat out the game. I'm sure he's full strength, but there's been some time off. Fresh, you can talk about that. When you haven't played in a week and a half, 10 days in game speed, that's a challenge. So how do you think Day-Day responds with a post-gimpy ankle, and is he going to be ready?
If he's healthy, I think it's going to be an advantage for him. Now, he's not we think he's Chicago, so he's a great athlete. He's not the athlete that sort of the Memphis guys are, in my opinion. He's athletic, but he's a little bit more controlled.
Yep.
By the way, this Arkansas State slander, I'm not as the number one recruiting target for Arkansas State in 1989 out of Lincoln County. I'm not saying.
Oh, I remember. Yeah,
the Aztecs, and I had the greatest recruiting visit with assistant coach Dickie Nutt. So I was not surprised at all. Just west of the Mississippi, the Jonesboro came in and gave my old Memphis State Tigers a beatdown. So the variability with Memphis is insane. But
the big question is, if your name is Richard Nutt, why do you go with Dickie Nutt? That's the big question.
Because if you know Dickie Nutt, he wasn't going any other way with that name. He was
okay. All
he
right.
was Jimmy Valvano.
I don't have my bell tonight, guys, because I'm in the car.
Just honk.
I'm going to give you this.
There we go. Oh, that's a first ever for LRA. The horn violation. I love it.
Check the New York City police report for Mark Jerome being arrested for uncommon honking.
Hey, real quick, you just brought something up that we didn't mention earlier, guard pressure. They really pressured the Clemson guards and caused them some problems. I don't know that our guards are as good as Clemson's guards, especially if Day-Day's not so healthy. I hope it doesn't cause us so many problems where we're turning the ball over and we can't get the ball up court, or we struggle to get the ball. We struggle to get in our offense really far away from the basket. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I watched that whole Clemson game. There were so many great games. Like the Florida Carolina was great.
Oh yeah.
And then there's been a bunch of good games, but here's what I'm hoping for. It's going to be a hard night for Rhodey, and we might set the spin dribble record for ACC play tonight, where he's just got to because he's not blowing by those guys. What I think will happen is that Ron will acknowledge, all right, Rhodey does some things really well. There's other things he's not good at. I don't think we're going to see Rhodey bring the ball up. I think, hopefully Day-Day's healthy. He stays in the game, no foul trouble, no re-injury, and he can handle that, right? He's got, as Fresh said, he's not like a super athlete, but bringing the ball up the court, I have no issues with Day-Day. If he gets in foul trouble, if he's hurt, it's not a good scenario for us to go to Rhodey with the spin dribble. I think you'll see Sharma, and I think you might even see Kofi bringing the ball up a little bit more than normal tonight against that guard pressure.
I'll say one more thing. I've watched Memphis, like Marky said, I've watched them 3 times for whatever reason, more than I've watched them in a long time. They're long and they're athletic. But they're not freak athletes. But you know what they are? They're relentless.
Oh,
and
great word.
They just go at you. And maybe they're long, but they're not like Tyrese Hunter's not a crazy athlete. I see him going to the basket. The little guy Rogers you said have or whatever. They're not crazy athletes. But, man, they just attack, and they have a lot of poise because the UConn game, they were up big. UConn comes back. UConn should have won. They staved them off. Danny Hurley did his thing. They beat them in overtime. MSU, they beat them. And then at Clemson, they were really, really poised, And you don't expect that necessarily from a team in that way, but I think they have a lot of poise to them. I'm not sure.
I agree.
That's what I think.
I agree. And Fresh, I think let's get into this.
Yeah.
You grew up in Tennessee, a lot of great basketball players, great tradition in that space. Memphis used to be Memphis State, and we were kind of getting recruited. You had a bunch of really good players. Keith Lee's the big name. But talk about Penny and how good he was relative to, not only the state, but also the country. And just I think people forget that Penny had a whole Nike campaign created around him with Little Penny, him and Shaq. He had some injuries, but he's an all-time great. And what was that like playing against him in high school?
Yeah, it was. So Memphis State back then, every single player on the roster was from Memphis. You know why? They didn't have to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
And Anthony, he came on the scene like me and you did, and Marky when AAU first started. So that back then it was known as the Athletic Amateur Union. And Anthony played the Memphis Y. And so we met him in the high school tournament. We came to Memphis, my little country school, and it was like Magic Johnson meets Michael Jordan was Anthony. He's a skinny kid. He's probably 160 pounds, 6'7", but ridiculous point guard. Memphis players, street ball, meaning I don't mean street ball, I mean blacktop. They took handling things, took pride in their handles and their jump. Anthony didn't really have a jump shot, but it was just otherworldly good. His stats when we were meeting him he was 75% as a sophomore from 2, 56 from 3, 90 from averaging 38 a game and the whole thing. We beat him. And then I played him twice again in AAU, and I beat him again. Then he's like, that's enough for us. And then he just demolished me. But it was just different level skill, different level the whole thing. You had that the weirdness passing. His passing was so deft, man, and explosiveness. So, we saw the first time I saw him touch a basketball, I'm like, he's going to be in the NBA, right? That's, and you've seen those guys.
Oh yeah. Do you think Memphis still has that identity as a city with like basketball guys, and it's got a different identity, but like.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword because back then everybody was public school. Todd Day, Billy Smith, I can go on and on. They all public schools. The Memphis, the private schools were all soft. Let's say it's white kids. They weren't very good. Now everybody goes to a private school, and it's kind of changed. You're not, you're playing in gyms. You have trainers, the whole thing. I don't know where the kids all end up and go. And I don't think that Memphis necessarily has that grassroots basketball. Dude, I could tell you, I could name you 20 guards who were unbelievable growing up back then who didn't even go to college So it's probably better because, the kids don't have, Penny was a Prop 48 kid, right? If he grew up in this day and age, he would have been at the best private school wherever he wanted to go. Grades would be handled. He'd take care of it, and it was a different thing. So.
Who was the best guy you played against, fresh, other than Anthony?
Yep.
And we'll talk about his record in a minute, coaching. But who was the guy who was just unbelievably good that never really played in college, either because of grades or
There's
trouble?
2 of them. I'll tell you right now. Dirty Red, who played AAU with me, but he was unbelievable at age 13. This is the Jerry Curl.
Wait, what's his name? Dirty Red? What's his real name?
Dirty Red, Derek Casey.
Okay.
But this is 13, 14. We would go to AAU tournaments and he'd jumpers. He was ridiculous. Great Jerry curl. And our other teammate, Homer, Homer. I was with Anthony a couple years ago. I mean, I ran into him. I was with Brian Stiff and this, so I talked to him. And I said, yeah, I used to play with Homer. He's like, oh, Homer. He used to kick his leg out in the jump shot. And those guys, they didn't have a shot. You've been around it, talent-wise? Are you kidding me? Those 2 guys from Memphis come to mind for me that we never saw. So, and I have no
what was it like, fresh growing up? Fayetteville is southern part of Tennessee, right?
Yep, southern middle, right in the
southern middle.
Yep.
So you grew up watching Memphis, UT. Who are the powerful programs in that state? Was it those 2 mainly? And then I know you've got your David Lipscomb stuff.
Yeah, well, UT back then, a guy from Columbia, who's our biggest rival, Columbia High School, he named Fred Jenkins, who I grew up, and that's why I have my famous chest pass have.
Yeah.
But he was 6'5". He was an old school 6'5" point guard, right? We didn't have them back then. And he went on. Everybody looked up Fred Jenkins at the University of Tennessee. Man, he was a star. Looked up to wanted to play like him a little bit. But I liked Alabama a lot. Enos Watley, remember that name?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Enos Watley, and I read stories about him when he was dribbling at age 2 and doing these things and whatever. And just different random guys. But, I gravitated through Mr. Fraley, as you know, to North Carolina. And I love the Big East. I love Sherman as I got older. And that stuff. So I was not a Virginia fan, guys. I loved it and appreciated it, but thank goodness they Offer me a scholarship.
So Marky, let's just get into let's get in a little bit into Penny as a coach. 14 seasons in the NBA. Got a little bit injured, never really reached his full potential as an NBA player, but a great player. As a coach, I'm looking at his record right now. He's been there. This is his 8th year, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No. This is his 7th year.
Wow.
He's had 20 wins, at least 20 wins every season. But only one year where he went deep in the tournament. So when I think Memphis fans on the Memphis forum would say, not great, but hey, you get 20 wins a year and you make the tournament pretty much every year. That's not terrible. I think, as a team that is looking for, or not looking, but maybe doing a quiet search for their next coach, probably not a guy. There's been some recruiting allegations around him, but hey, in this day and age, like, I don't even know really what a violation is anymore with NIL and all the I guess financial liberties that schools take. It's just a different world, and he's put together a good team with one returning player, which is incredible to me. But I think 20 years ago it'd be easy to criticize him and how he's put together his program. Maybe he adapted earlier than we did in terms of just going out and getting guys. But as we saw with AJ Devansa, the number 1 player in the country, going to BYU for $8 million a year, all you need is a billionaire who wants to win, and all of a sudden you can become a pretty powerful school. So
become relevant. Right. I think the game started.
It's
yeah.
5,
All right, let's go. We'll be back.
5-3.
Yeah, my bad. Me coming on late messed us up. So.
All right, we'll be back.
See you guys. Go Hoos.
Go Hoos.